Hi, this is Robert, and it's Halloween season. And I grew up watching a lot of horror movies and wanted to show some of my favorites. And these are old, mainly older movies. I'm covering up to the 1960s here. I'll probably do a run on more recent movies soon, but I'm going to call this one little known horror classics, but a lot of them are probably well known. But if you're looking for something to watch this Halloween season, these are some suggestions of movies I grew up enjoying and still do enjoy watching now and then. And the first is the oldest, Nosferatu, which is the famous 1922 German expressionist vampire movie done by F.W. Murnau. And this is a very creepy movie to watch. I mean, there are parts of it that are quite dated and a little silly, but for the most part, the scenes when Max Schreck is Count Orlok is on screen, they are wonderfully creepy. I wish he had more scenes in the movie, but it's worth a watch, very much so. This is the Kino Classics print. This is Image Entertainment. Pardon me. This is a restored version. There are a number of them out there, but we're lucky to have this movie because the estate of Bram Stoker was able to win a court case claiming the movie infringed on the Dracula copyright, and they had almost they tried to have every copy of it destroyed, and only a few made it through, and we're lucky to be able nowadays to restore it to something that looks as good as it does in these modern reissues. And usually, if I'm talking classic horror, the best place to start is Universal Pictures with their famous horror franchises. I mean, they pretty much, how do we say, invented the English speaking sound horror movie? Hard to say, but I mean, Dracula was a huge hit when it came out. Frankenstein was equally huge when it came out. Both made stars of the actors who were in them. Bela Lugosi as the Count, and of course Boris Karloff as the Frankenstein monster. This is a older DVD collection. They call it the Bela Lugosi collection. But oddly enough, what it actually is a collection of the Universal movies, four of the movies on this five movie set. They're all on this one disc. It's a double-sided, double-layer disc. But four of those movies are collaborations between Lugosi and Karloff. Usually the PR of the era would say they had a animosity against each other, but they were both too professional to actually have anything like that going on. That was probably just PR. But anyway, the movies they did together are gems, all of them. The Black Cat is very famous. It's probably one of the most stylish horror movies of the 30s, with Karloff as a satanic architect who's built his house on top of an old fort, and he keeps his ex-wives preserved in the basement, and one of them happened to be Lugosi's ex-wife. And while Karloff prospered in the First World War, Lugosi's character suffered in a POW camp. And Lugosi comes back looking for his wife and vowing revenge against Karloff. The Raven is great fun. It's the second of the Poe collaborations that Lugosi and Karloff did. And Lugosi just chews the scenery on this. He's a famous plastic surgeon who, or just famous surgeon, I believe, nerve surgeon. What is that? Neurologist? Yeah. Who he has this intense fanaticism around Edgar Allan Poe, and actually builds most of Poe's torture devices in his basement. And Boris Karloff is a convict on the run who seeks shelter with Lugosi and wants Lugosi to change his face so he won't be recognized. And Lugosi does that, but turns him into something close to a monster. I mean, half his face is hanging down on one side. But it's a great movie because Lugosi just hams it up and chews the scenery, and it's just great fun. The third, and probably, I'm not going to say it's my favorite, but it's one I enjoyed a hell of a lot. Growing up, is called The Invisible Ray with Lugosi and Karloff. And in this, Karloff is obviously the lead character. He plays a astrophysicist who discovers that a meteor containing an unknown radioactive element hit Africa millions of years ago, and he is able to get a safari organized and goes down there. Lugosi is a famous doctor who goes along on the safari. Unfortunately, Karloff finds the radioactive element, but becomes poisoned by it, and his touch becomes death. He goes to Lugosi for help while still in the jungle, and Lugosi is able to come up with a modest cure to mitigate the disease, the radiation sickness, to where he can live amongst people, but he decides not to and fakes his death. And Lugosi and the other members return to Europe, and Lugosi uses this Radium X to heal people, while Karloff in secret uses it to exact revenge on those he feels have wronged him. So it's a great movie. It was echoed later by a Lovecraft remake called Die Monster Die, where Karloff also became a radioactive killing monster. But anyway, the fourth collaboration, Black Friday, I'm not that fond of, but the other Lugosi movie, the one that really, I guess, gives the collection its name, is the Murders in the Rue Morgue film that Lugosi did. I think it was his first Universal film after Dracula. And again, as the killer ape roaming Paris, and Lugosi is its owner, and has this insane idea to crossbreed the species. But anyway, they're all, while somewhat dated movies, they all have that wonderful classic Universal spirit, worth watching. Across town at Paramount Pictures, they also wanted to get on the horror bandwagon, and they came out with a version of The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells, starring Charles Laughton. It was called The Island of Lost Souls, and it's a well done movie. It's got its really creepy moments. Lugosi plays one of the creatures whom Lawton has turned from an animal into 95% human. But it's a good movie to watch. It's quite old, but it has some wonderfully chilling scenes, especially when the man creatures revolt and drag Lawton into the House of Pain for his retribution, for their revenge. Some movies from the 40s you may not have heard of. This is a movie, Beast with Five Fingers, starring Peter Lorre, where Lorre is he works for a famous concert pianist who is killed mysteriously, and when they, for some reason, they have to go back and open the pianist's coffin, and when they do, they find he is cut off. The corpse is cut off its own hand, and this. I don't want to give away too much, but anyway, there are some interesting scenes of the hand walking around on its own. This was probably one of the first, if not the first, disembodied hand movies. But it's from the early 40s, I believe. And also has J. Carrol Naish in it, who is a great character actor of the period. Now we're getting into something obscure. This is a movie I enjoyed growing up. It's a science fiction horror. It's the first known movie made of the story Donovan's Brain, where the brain of a rich tycoon is removed after his death and kept alive by scientists. And come to find out, the brain grows and becomes more powerful and actually starts exerting a psychic control over one of the doctors. But sadly, it's not easily available. This is a bootleg disc that I got on eBay. This movie was done in 1944. And it, oddly enough, stars Erich von Stroheim as one of the doctors. But it's wonderfully moody and eerie, very well done picture for its day. And we're going to jump, I believe we're into the 50s now. So Curse of the Demon, in England, I believe it was known as Night of the Demon. But it's a very famous horror film starring Dana Andrews, and there is a wonderfully done demon in it. I really enjoy the demon. But the British version has 9 extra minutes. There's a whole subplot that was cut out for the American version. But it's about a man who leads a satanic cult, and Dana Andrews is a psychologist, psychiatrist, or a scholar at least, of the mind who goes around disproving psychic phenomenon, and he plans to publicly denounce the Satanist as a fraud. And as a result, the Satanist puts a curse on him, and come to find out it's the real deal. But there's some great mood and tension, and when you see the demon, he's very much worth the wait, considering it's a 1950s movie, and the effects back then were usually quite primitive. Well worth recommending. The Crawling Eye is also known as the Trollenberg Terror. It's the first of my British horror movies I'm showing. Actually, Night was British as well, or Curse of the Demon was, pardon me. But this stars Forrest Tucker. He goes to Switzerland, and at the behest of a friend who has a observatory there. And come to find out, there's this radioactive cloud clinging to the side of the Trollenberg Mountain. And people are dying mysteriously who go up on the mountain. And come to find out, it's a race of really hideous looking alien creatures, basically huge brains with eyes and tentacles. And they eventually overrun the observatory, but it's very well done, lots of tension, good acting, worth a watch. And this one's a little controversial. This is a William Castle movie called The Tingler, and I'll admit, it's borderline cheesy. I guess several of these films are borderline cheesy, but I consider them all good fun, and they'll appeal to the kid in you if you let them out. This movie has a pretty wild premise in that when you're frightened, there's a parasitic creature that lives inside your body that starts growing, and it creates that spine tingling feeling you get when you're frightened. And the only way to forestall it is to scream to release the tension, and then it shrinks back to a microscopic size. And whether through I don't know. I'll leave it up to you whether Price does it intentionally or whether it's a accident. But a woman who's deaf and dumb who can't scream gets frightened to death, and Price removes the tingler from her. And once it's loose, or once it's out, he finds it's this incredibly strong, it looks like a really nasty caterpillar, but it's big and it can strangle you. And it starts running amok, but it's just fun. Anyway, good movie. And we're still in British horror. This the first of my Blob movies that I'm not showing any that actually say the Blob. This Hammer Pictures, when they started, they actually did sci-fi. And two of the most famous are The Four-Sided Triangle and X, the Unknown. And I grew up watching X and just think it is so cool. But basically, the premise is that there are, rather than silicon-based life forms deep in the earth, rather than carbon-based life forms like you and me, there are silicon-based life forms living deep in the earth. And depending on the closeness of the moon and the planets, they can be drawn up near the surface, and if there's a crack in the earth, they can come out and wreak havoc because they're intensely radioactive. Anyway, when you see the creature, it looks like a big blob, but the effects it has on people, of course, kills people because it's so very radioactive. There's some great scenes of people melting in this, which is impressive for a film done in the early mid-50s. But it's finally available in this country on Blu-ray. For a long time, all I had was, again, another bootleg DVD of it. Okay, now we get into Italian horror. And in my opinion, it began and peaked simultaneously with this film, Mario Bava's Black Friday, starring the great Barbara Steele. And this movie captures, it's in black and white, and it captures the look and feel of the older Universal horror films, but it is much more intense, far gorier. Uh, it is really, it can be quite terrifying if you're a little kid. I remember seeing this as a kid and hiding behind the couch. It scared me so much, but very much worth a watch if you have not seen it. I believe it is available on Amazon Prime as well. Okay, and now we go to Hammer in its prime, and my opinion, uh, one of their best was Brides of Dracula, which is interesting because it's the only, or one of the few Hammer Dracula films that doesn't have Christopher Lee in it. Again, this was done right after Horror of Dracula, and so Christopher Lee's account is still dead, but we are still graced with Peter Cushing playing Dr. Van Helsing. And this time he's up against the handsome Baron von Meinster, who's a count, and or a baron, pardon me, and he escapes out into the world and starts collecting brides. And as the classic vampirist, Andre Melli, who you see in the bottom left corner here under my thumb there, who is just wonderfully creepy in it. But it's just a very good taut story, worth a watch. We're back at Bava. This is his second. This is a trilogy that he did of stories he lumped together under the title Black Sabbath. And it has Boris Karloff in probably the best bit where, pardon me, Karloff plays a vampire called a Wurdlak. And it's, again, takes place in Russia in midwinter, and Karloff goes to kill a vampire and sadly comes back turned into a vampire and starts preying on his family. But there's a wonderful atmosphere. This one is in color, and it's worth a watch. Just to show how great Bava is, the whole first segment is based around this woman stealing a ring from a dead old woman, and they have this really grotesque mannequin of the dead old woman, and how much fear mileage he gets out of that is amazing. But anyway, very good movie. And this one, I've been wanting to tell folks about. Everyone I meet who is a horror fan, I like to show this. It's called The Black Pit of Dr. M. This is a Mexican horror movie, and it has no wrestlers in it. This is a frightening movie. I mean, this is a serious horror movie. The Spanish name is Misterios de Ultratumba, or which I believe is Mysteries of the Afterlife, I believe. But it's interesting. I was able to see this on TV, Shock Theater in Tampa, Florida. Growing up as a kid, they apparently had gotten a copy and dubbed it but the fellow doing the commentary did not know that there were any translated copies in the U.S. prior to this disc. But if you can find this, it is worth watching. I hope it's on one of the streaming services because it's just a very creepy movie. It has a lot of great horror tropes in it. There's a little bit of there's a doctor who runs an asylum, and he has made a pact with a fellow doctor that whoever dies first will help the other go over to the other side and come back to tell about it. And remember the old adage, beware of what you ask for. Because all hell breaks loose. I mean, there's a mad woman who throws acid in the face of one of the orderlies in this mental hospital the doctor runs. And when he comes back, it's in the wrong body, and it's a very great, very campy, fun, creepy movie. Lots of fun. Okay, we're getting now down to the end. I'm sure I'm well past 10 movies, but I don't care. This movie is famous probably more for Billy Idol making a song about it. It's called Eyes Without a Face. And it was done in, I believe, the early 1959. But it's a French film. You usually find it with subtitles and under the French name, which I probably can't pronounce. If I can even find it. Anyway, but again, we have a famous doctor who's a surgeon, and his daughter becomes disfigured, I believe, in a fire. And he proceeds to start kidnapping young women, removing their faces and grafting them onto his daughter. And usually with mixed results. But there are some incredibly graphic and realistic surgery scenes, which are you don't expect in a movie from the late 50s. So, it's quite intense. Well, seeing Eyes Without a Face reminded me, God, I left out Diabolique, which is a great movie. This inspired Hitchcock so much, I believe he kidnapped the screenwriter to write Vertigo. Pardon me, this is a French language thriller. How does it go? The husband is dead and they hide him in a pool. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it's wonderfully suspenseful. And very well done. Very much worth a watch. Okay, the next movie is one of my favorites. And again, we're into high camp here. Another Italian horror movie. This one was directed by Mario Caiano, probably. But it's another Barbara Steele movie. This is my second favorite of hers after Black Friday. It's most famously known as Nightmare Castle. I believe that's what it was released as in this country. But forget the word, had a second name. But this is a really, it's almost over the top. I mean, the Barbara and it's set in the 1800s. The mad doctor is named Dr. Aerosmith. And he catches Barbara and the stable boy in making out and takes his revenge on them, tortures them both to death, cuts them up and buries them here and there, and then goes and marries a Barbara's, who was it, niece, twin sister, whatever, brings her back from an asylum where she'd been, and then proceeds to try and drive her crazy. In so doing, he riles up the ghosts of Barbara and the stable boy. There they are in this Blu-ray. And they come back for a night of retribution, which is very well done. But this is it's actually best to buy the Blu-ray because you get 2 extra films on it. Castle of Blood, which is based on a Poe story, and Terror Creatures from the Grave, which is also fun. But this movie, you can find Nightmare Castle usually on a lot of bargain discs because it did fall out of copyright. But thank God somebody has gathered together the best copies and restored it into something that's worth watching. There's a whole nother scene in this that you don't see usually. But it's just a fun movie. Anyway, that's my recommendations for things to watch this Halloween. If you're into creepy and or cheesy old horror movies, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great Halloween, and we'll see you later.